So WYLDER is definitely going to be one of the more popular characters to play as in Elden Ring Nightreign. Having played the game myself back in Feb, I can definitely see him as the sort of jack of all trades type of character who is really decent at everything, but doesn't really excel in any specific area. And so today I'm going to run you guys through everything you need to know about WYLDER, as well as showcasing some gameplay from the playtest back in Feb. Now, to start off with just his description, as it is kind of the easiest way to explain his playstyle overall, he is described as essentially the balanced all-rounder hero, which is kind of what I was getting at when I said jack of all trades, and he will probably be one of the easiest characters, if not the easiest character to pick up for those who are new to the game. And so you can expect to see a lot of people playing as WYLDER early on, not only because he seems the easiest to get the hang of and he seems very enticing for newer players, but he also looks really cool as well. And so I think a lot of people are just going to be drawn to WYLDER in their first handful of games. Now, in terms of what you start with when you pick WYLDER, he will start with a mini shield, which is really useful if you're good at parrying. And then he also, in terms of his weapon, has a greatsword. I can't remember if you can actually two-hand the sword, but I'm pretty sure you can, just the same way that you can in the base game, because I'm fairly sure I can remember sort of doing that after a handful of games playing as WYLDER. Now, for those who don't know, each of the characters in this game will essentially have 3 different abilities, one of those being a passive ability, one of them being your more regular used ability, and then one of them being pretty much your ultimate ability. So for WYLDER, with his passive ability, this one is really good. It actually allows him to cheat death a single time, which is sort of vague in the description, but how this actually works is that when you receive your first fatal blow, so if you're fighting a boss, for example, and you're at a quarter of your health and they hit you with a critical hit, which might normally deal enough damage to kill you on the spot, that blow is almost just negated and you don't actually lose any health using that ability to cheat death that single time. Now, once that is done, obviously that's gone for the rest of the game. And so this is a really good ability, especially like I said, for those who are new to the game. This will just give you that sort of get out of jail free card. If you're in your first boss fight and you're getting damaged a lot by the boss, this will kind of just give you a second chance, which is part of what makes him a little bit easier to get the hang of. Now, in terms of his more regular ability, this is called the claw shot, and it is essentially a grapple hook, which can be used in a bunch of different ways. And honestly, it is one of the more enjoyable abilities from the characters that I played in the playtest. Now, the main way that it's sort of meant to be used is that you can drag enemies towards you. So if there's a bunch of enemies that are all kind of bunched up and you don't want to go in trying to take them all out at once because maybe they're going to all damage you, you can just kind of grapple hook one of them towards you, take him out, and then obviously that's going to spread those enemies out a little bit. On the flip side, on the bigger enemies, some of them are obviously too heavy for WYLDER to actually kind of pull towards him. So instead, that will pull you towards them. And that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it can be really good, especially in boss fights, for example, if they are dealing some ranged attacks to you. And obviously playing as WYLDER, you're most likely going to be playing as a more melee type of class. You can have crossbows and stuff like that, but for the most part, he is definitely better in melee. Well, this can allow you to close range on those enemies, and therefore their ranged attacks are no longer really an issue, and you can get close enough to actually deal some damage yourself. On the flip side though, it doesn't have to be used on enemies. You can actually use the grapple hook to just grapple onto things and move around the map a bit quicker. If the circle is kind of closing in on you and you need to get to the safe area, it can be a great way to get around faster. You can also, grapple up the side of a building and stuff like that. And so with this claw shot, there are definitely a bunch of different ways to use it, and it does make him feel very versatile in that sense. Now, as for his ultimate ability, this one is a powerful single attack that launches an iron stake, which will essentially explode right in front of you. This almost just feels like you've got a shotgun that is just blasting out of his hand or something. It deals crazy damage. It has a big explosion right in front of you. And this will essentially one-shot kill most of the sort of regular enemies in the game. Obviously, mini bosses and actual bosses, not so much, but even then it will deal really good damage. And seeing as it has such a big blast, it's almost impossible to actually sort of miss with this thing too. So this thing is just almost a guaranteed massive amount of damage that you're going to be able to deal. Now, before we go any further, if you guys are new to the channel and you are interested in more Elden Ring Nightreign content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. There is plenty more info on the way, breaking down all of the characters like this, as well as any and all news that we get, plus plenty of guides once the game launches. So keep your eyes peeled for more. Now, here you can see a graphic that I've gotten from the Elden Ring wiki. This actually shows his progression as you level up throughout the game. So obviously, as you're killing enemies and gathering runes, when you go to a site of grace, you'll level up. It's not quite the same as the base game of Elden Ring, where you choose the sort of stat that you're going to level up. Instead, it just levels your character up as a whole. And here you can see all of the values, at least in the playtest anyway. They may have, changed this by the time the game launches, but in the playtest, this is what those values were, with obviously red being HP, blue being FP, and green being stamina. So you can see by the end there, if you get to level 15, which is generally where you want to try and be if you're going to face that final boss, he has a really good health pool, and that in combination with having that mini shield, especially if you're really good at parrying, can be a really good combo. You're going to have a lot of health and you can sort of parry a lot of attacks. Obviously, it's not quite as useful in some of those boss fights, but even though he's not quite a tank character, he can still be really strong when it comes to his health pool. And he also deals a decent amount of damage too. Like I said, if you're not as good at parrying, you can actually just like two-hand the greatsword, or obviously whatever other weapons you find throughout each match. Now, overall, when it came to the playtime that I had playing as WYLDER, he was probably one of the characters I used the most, just because, like I said, he is kind of the easiest to get the hang of. So I think the first 2 or 3 games that I played, I was playing as him just to kind of learn the game. And I definitely found him to be one of the easiest to use, at least in the overall sense. Now, maybe not quite as much when it came to the boss fights. I think there are other characters that definitely excelled in the boss fights a little bit more. But when it comes to just kind of farming runes and getting through the actual days to get through those boss fights, he probably felt the easiest to me, just fighting against those more regular enemies that you can kind of take on 1v1. Now, in the boss fights themselves, like I said, he does feel a little bit less powerful than Duchess and Guardian, and that is more to do with the fact that he is that sort of jack of all trades character, which, as the saying always goes, jack of all trades but master of none. And so I think that's why he felt a little bit sort of weaker in those boss fights. Not that he was bad by any means, it's just that the other characters kind of have more specific skill sets that I think can be used a little bit better when it comes to those boss fights. Probably my favorite part of playing as WYLDER is just that grapple hook. Is really, really fun to use. Like I mentioned earlier, you can use it in so many different ways. Bringing enemies towards you, bringing yourself towards enemies, or literally just using it to get around the map faster. This is very much the type of game where you do need to be kind of on the move at all times. You can't stagnate, or else you're just not going to get enough runes to level up. And so having that sort of better movement than a lot of the other classes, I found that to be really useful. As well as, like I mentioned, if you need to maybe separate a bunch of enemies, using that grapple hook is a great way to do that. That's where I found his ability set to be really good. You could maybe use the grapple to pull one towards you, take them out, and then use his ultimate ability to just get an instant kill on another one, and instantly you've turned a bunch of enemies into maybe only 2 or 3 left by that point, and you can take them out a lot easier, sort of reducing the risk. So that's sort of what I mean when I say he just feels a bit easier against those regular enemies. And I think this is why he is probably going to be one of the most used characters in the game, especially for anyone who maybe hasn't played Elden Ring and is just a bit newer to the experience overall. But that is essentially all of the info that you need to know about WYLDER in Elden Ring Nightreign. Like I said, I'm going to be doing these for all 4 of the characters that I was able to play in the playtest, and then I will also be doing some content on the characters that I haven't played as, but what we know about them so far. So if you want to learn everything you need to know about Elden Ring Nightreign in the lead up to launch, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like I said, because there is plenty of content on the way. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.